Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. I'm your host, CJ Baumgartner, and we're getting ready to recap all of the latest in Minnesota Twins baseball. Hey, they're 3-0, a really solid start. I was about to say perfect, but not quite start to the season. Although if you were to script it, if you're Falvey, if you're Rocco Baldelli, this is exactly how you wanted the season to start. 3 wins, no losses. Pitching staff looked great. The bullpen looks solid outside of one particular person, maybe two. We'll get to them in a second. But overall, the Twins did their jobs. They got 3 wins in the opening series against Kansas City. Now, there's a couple things. One, the Twins looked good. And 2, they played the Royals. And I think there's a few times throughout the series, Kansas City, through the first part of Sunday's game, was like over their first 11 with runners in scoring position, and by the time they did anything with a runner at second base or more, the game was pretty much over by that point, or at least the Twins had enough of a cushion where they could hang on and win. But hey, the Twins are going to play the Royals at some point this season. They're going to play much tougher opponents, but nice to get the early wins, get the early confidence, and we'll see what's going on. So I have a handful of notes that will go down, and we'll talk about this opening series, and then we'll take a look at the series with Miami coming up in the reunion with a Luis Arraez that is happening this week. So here we go. In the opening series, my initial news and notes on the situation. First off is that for an opening day start, for a situation for Lopez, Pablo Lopez did as good of a job as you could have asked him to do. He put the Twins in a great position. I thought, really, I think it was reported he threw like 96 miles an hour. His average fastball velocity sat around 93, 94, so a couple miles an hour higher, although I'm going to say maybe opening day jitters had a little bit to do with the fact that he was throwing a couple miles an hour harder. Also meant he wasn't able to locate it more. I think you're just amped, throwing a little harder. Doesn't quite mean you're able to control it. But hey, great start for Pablo Lopez. Went 5 1/3, had 8 strikeouts, and I believe one walk, maybe no walks. Doesn't matter. He took care of business. Had one real particular jam that he got out of, bases loaded, nobody out, got a strikeout, and then got a double play when I think wasn't Mondesi. It was that doesn't matter because he went into a double play by not running towards first base, which either he thought Gallo was going to tag him out or it was foul, is about the only thing I could say for him in that game. But Joey Gallo playing first base since Alex Kirilloff is on the IL. Joey Gallo doing a nice job there. Joey Gallo, a Gold Glove winner in the outfield, and if you can do a Gold Glove in the corner outfield, there's a good chance that you know enough about defense to be able to play first base, and Joey Gallo has played a nice first base to start the season for the Twins. But Pablo Lopez, I thought looked great. A little shaky at times, but again, it's the beginning of the season. I'm not going to worry too much about it. And this is something that you noticed with Sonny Gray as well. I thought he had a good start as well. Went 5 innings, only 1 strikeout, a couple walks, and had again, wasn't able to locate the fastball. And I'm going to, again, chalk it up to first start of the season. As much as these guys have had some time in spring training to work some things out, you know that spring training, now that the games count, it means a little more that like, hey, if I give up 5 runs here, this is going to go against my actual ERA. That's going to dictate my free agency payout versus a spring training start where it doesn't really matter. Also, you're playing in Kansas City and not Florida. You haven't seen the Royals hitters because the Royals do spring training in Arizona. There's just a few different things that come into that mix. The games are for real, all that kind of stuff. So not going to worry too much about it. And the same thing with Joe Ryan today. Gave up some loud contact early, gave up a home run as well, but outside of that, looked good. Threw the fastball a lot, but trying to work in a couple of those other pitches that he talked about in spring training, trying to be, his fastball's good and it's his main pitch, but trying to get those secondary pitches to allow him to take that next step as a starter. And for Joe Ryan, taking that next step means developing those secondary pitches. And then also the narrative on Joe Ryan is that against the bad lineups, he's really good. Like against Kansas City, I think they mentioned before today's game, had an ERA of like 1.2, which is just phenomenal against Kansas City last season, and then only gave up 1 run in 6 innings today. So he does really well against the bad lineups, and when he faces like a Houston Astros or when he faces some of the more top tier lineups in baseball, they give him a little bit of trouble. Now, Joe Ryan still has time to develop, and he still has time to develop secondary pitches, but that's where Joe Ryan can take that kind of next step throughout the season, and that's something to monitor with Joe Ryan as the year goes on. But I think, again, as good a starts as you could have wanted. Twins starting rotation has only given up 1 earned run in 16 and a third innings, which is, again, that will play. You're also playing the Royals, so it's really hard. They have Luis Arraez, who's just swinging and missing at everything right now as like their cleanup hitter. Outside of Bobby Witt Jr. and the guy who hit the home run today, whose name I don't even know, is not an ideal spot. That's about the only guys that they have that can really hit. And it's been tough going for Kansas City, and their rebuild continues, and they're going to be bad for a while. But anyway, for the Twins in this game, I think the series rather, I think the starting rotation was solid, and it's something that the Twins are really banking on with this team, is the starting rotation being a lot better. And I know that this happened right away on Twitter on the very first game of the season after Rocco pulled Pablo Lopez after 5 1/3. Everyone, oh, classic Rocco. He said he was going to pull the starters early and then never did. And again, if you listen to the podcast back in the fall, I'm no Rocco Baldelli defender, but I mean, it's got its limits with some of the criticism of Baldelli. At the same time, this starting rotation, if we get to mid-July and Rocco is still pulling the starters after 5, then yeah, we can start to criticize that like wholeheartedly a little bit more, because there should be no excuses with the way that this starting rotation is built. But it's the first start of the season. I think Baldelli it's not so much an innings limit right now as it is a pitch limit, and kind of around that 85 pitch mark is where the Twins have felt comfortable pulling some of their starters in the first 3 games to try and work them back up. Because again, they've made a bunch of spring training starts, but they're not real games, and they only go through the order once, and they just need some time to build up their arms. Because again, you can have them pitch 7, 8 innings, 9 innings through the first month of the season, but if their arms are wore out by late August, then what's the point if they're not ready to go by the postseason? So there's a bit of conserving and trying not to have that burnout happen necessarily early. And again, the Twins were pitching effectively. And you know what helps, and you know what takes a lot of the pressure and a lot of the criticism away from the starting rotation being pulled early, is when your bullpen can actually close the door. And we talked about the bullpen already a couple different times in the recent handful of episodes of Bombs Away. Again, go check them all out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube as well. But the bullpen is very key for this team. And the way the Twins are structured and like to be structured is they like to have just, 1 inning guys. This guy will pitch this inning, then this guy will pitch the next inning. There's no multiple inning holdovers and all that. So again, last year when they could only pitch 4 innings, they were requiring 5 different guys to all do their jobs every single night. Now, when you get it to 5 innings, 6 innings, and even once you build it up to 7 innings and you're only requiring 3 guys to do their jobs, then if somebody doesn't, you have fallback options. But the Twins bullpen has done a really nice job slamming the door. No hits, no runs in the first game of the season when you had what I consider the Twins' A-tier bullpen arms. You went to, I think Jorge Lopez was the first. Caleb Thielbar was the first reliever out of the pen for Baldelli this season. It then went into not Pablo Lopez, but Jorge Lopez, who the Twins traded for at the deadline last year. And then you went from Jorge Lopez into Griffin Jax, and then from Griffin Jax into Yohan Duran, who slammed the door in the 9th inning. Interesting to see if Duran ends up becoming the primary closer. Baldelli has never named a primary closer since being manager of the Twins, but maybe Duran just kind of has to do it by default, kind of like how Taylor Rogers had to do it by default in 2019, even though the Twins really didn't want to use Rogers in a primary closer role. Now I can see Lopez and Duran splitting it because Lopez got the save in the 9th inning on Saturday night. And again, they used a lot of the same suspects with Thielbar and with Jax. And I think Alcala also got an inning in I'm trying to remember. I think everybody with the bullpen has gotten an appearance except for Cole Sands at this point, and Cole Sands is meant to be a long reliever. And with Malley and Maeda due up in the next series, both of them are coming off injury concerns to end last season. Maeda never pitched last season, coming back from Tommy John surgery, so it makes sense to save Cole Sands just in case you need to use Cole Sands in one of the first 2 games of that series against Miami. But the Twins, again, were able to bring in some of those bullpen guys and slam the door. And I consider the A tier for the Twins bullpen to be Duran and Jax and Lopez and Thielbar. Those 4 guys are the Twins' top 4. After that, you have a significant drop-off, and then you get down to your Cole Sands, your Jorge Alcalas, your Giovanni Morans, and your Emilio Pagans. Those are your options with those 8 guys in the bullpen. So let's talk about Giovanni Moran. Of course, we mentioned him in our bullpen preview. Go back a couple episodes ago and you can look at that on the Bombs Away podcast. But with Moran in the bullpen, he beat out he got that last spot, him and Sands. Moran is a lefty, the second lefty in the pen. And I think with Moran, he's got potential. I really do like what Moran is and what he can become, but his issue is he can't throw strikes. And if you can't throw strikes out of the bullpen, you give up way too many walks. Walks will haunt. And we saw that when Moran came into pitch today, and he doesn't give up a ton of home runs, but he gave up an absolute moonshot in today's, maybe not a moonshot, maybe that's a little strong, but gave up a home run. And that's the thing with Moran. It's why he's the second lefty. It's why he didn't get to pitch until there was like a 4-run cushion. And the same thing with Emilio Pagan, who gave up a run in the 9th inning trying to finish out the game. It was a 4-run advantage for the Twins at 7-3, ends up giving a loud double and a hit, and ends up having a run come in. Was able to clean things up after that because, again, he had a 4-run cushion and was playing the Royals. But Emilio Pagan, man, is going to Emilio Pagan. And Moran and Pagan are 2 guys who really need to prove themselves. Pagan's not going anywhere because the Twins are paying him $3 million, but Moran is a lefty. He's young, so he's got some options remaining. But I think what the Twins bullpen can become, and we'll monitor this throughout the season, your tier 1 is really good. Like really, really good. But if you can get Alcala and or Moran especially because he's a lefty, but Alcala, because I think Alcala has more talent and at least has more major league experience and more of an ability to kind of flesh that out. This Twins bullpen becomes even better because not only do you have 4 guys you can turn to, but 5. And again, we talked about you want your starters to pitch longer, so it's less stress on your bullpen. And again, even if you need your bullpen to go long, you're requiring a lot of guys to do their job. And that just adds one more guy who you trust to do the job in those situations. And Alcala has that ability to do just that with the Twins bullpen. This Twins bullpen could get to the 2020 level. That 2020 bullpen was really good with Rogers and with May and with all of these guys and Thielbar and some of these guys thrown in the mix. Was a really, really good Twins bullpen. And towards the back half of 2019, Sergio Romo got in the mix there as well. That Twins bullpen was good. And now you have an opportunity to get to that same level of production. It can be a fine bullpen. It can be an above average bullpen. The Twins bullpen was average last season, and that was with Emilio Pagan getting a lot of high leverage innings, dragging them down. So I think that if this Twins bullpen, could be good. And I've mentioned that before, so I don't want to dwell too much on that. But Moran, shaky. And until Moran can prove himself, he's just a guy. And I think it's the story with Blake Snell when he was pitching for the Rays and he was streaming, playing video games, and he heard the news and he said, we just traded Tommy Pham for blah, 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 and a slapdick prospect. And if you're, Trevor Plouffe had some really funny words on that because everybody was kind of mad at him. Like, how could you say that about a prospect? He was ranked to this. And Trevor Plouffe is like, well, until you actually get up to the big leagues and prove yourself, everybody is just kind of a slapdick prospect. Like there's even the big prospects. Like there's not a lot of guys. Most guys when they come up are just these nobodies who kind of have to prove themselves. Even if they have a high prospect ranking, to big league guys, until you actually get up and produce at the big league level, they really don't want to hear it. They really don't have time for your story in that regard. And so with Moran, everybody talks about, and myself included, how crucial Moran could be if he takes a step up. And I liked what Moran did last season when he was able to throw strikes. But if he can't throw strikes, he's just a slapdick reliever. Like that's just what it is. And I think he can take that step up, but just got to throw strikes. And Emilio Pagan hashed it out enough. I don't even want to. I could spend the rest of the podcast talking about that, so I'm not gonna. Anyway, Twins bullpen now in a really good spot to be a really, really good unit this season. So let's look at some other things I saw in the opening series. So Rocco showing off his depth was very, very key, especially in that first game. So there was a righty on the mound in Zach Greinke. You had Joey Gallo at first base, a lefty. You had Nick Gordon at second base, who's a lefty. Now, Gordon and Farmer are going to platoon that position a lot. When a lefty starts, Farmer gets the start. When a righty, starts, then Gordon will get the start. And that's what happened. Gordon got the start. Then the Royals had to go to their bullpen. Quantanero, I'm butchering the new Tampa Bay manager's last name, Kansas City manager's last name. He came from Tampa Bay. And he came in, brought in a lefty, and when you bring in a reliever, remember, you have to face at least 3 batters when you bring in a pitcher in the middle of an inning. 3 batter minimum, or at least I think until the next, like you can't bring in more than 2 batters in an inning, I think is basically the rule. And so that meant that he was going to have to face 3 batters. So the Twins immediately pinch hit Nick Gordon, and they put instead Kyle Farmer, who drew a walk. And then Joey Gallo's spot was up. The Twins pinch hit Donovan Solano. Donovan Solano came in with an RBI, put the Twins up 2-0. And that's Rocco showing off his depth. He did it again yesterday with Gordon by bringing in Farmer. And then in today's game against Kansas City, you saw it again. Kyle Farmer immediately came in to pinch hit for Nick Gordon. And here's the interesting wrinkle, and we'll get to the interesting wrinkle in just one second. But first, just want to say that that's Rocco showing off the depth of the bench. And when you don't have Mark Contreras, or when you don't have Celestino, some of these righty options where it's like, look, I mean, theoretically you have the matchup, but I trust Gordon as just as much as I trust you. So we're just going to ride the hot hand, or just ride the guy who's already out on the field. To actually have veteran major league hitters like Farmer and Solano to throw in those positions is huge, and just and is a testament to the Twins trying to get that depth. Now it's early in the season, but still to have that ability doesn't completely make up for a healthy Polanco's production, but at least can get you to a spot where you're still bringing in positive win probability added and positive production into your lineup. But the interesting part, and I tweeted this out during the game, was that they did not pinch hit for Joey Gallo like they did on Thursday. And on Thursday, Joey Gallo had a couple at-bats and didn't get a hit. But to this point, Joey Gallo hadn't had a hit yet in his Twins career. He proceeds to notch a double off the wall. And then in his next 2 at-bats, hits just absolute moonshot home runs, exit velo of like 107 off of both of them. So you could see the confidence that Baldelli had in Joe. I think Joey Gallo's the home run came in that at bat. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but the point is Rocco had trust in Gallo and thought, hey, this guy's close. He's close to having that breakout game. He could have went with Solano, who's the righty, against the lefty, and Gallo just absolutely smashed one. And because that pitcher that Garrett, who Gallo hit it off of, was the same pitcher who he got pinch hit for the other day when he got pinch hit for Solano. So Baldelli pushed the right buttons. I'm not a huge Baldelli guy, but Baldelli pushed the right buttons in this series. So you got to give credit where credit's due. And the Twins were able to win their first 3 games of the series. And Joey Gallo, again, I think it's important to know who Joey Gallo is as a hitter. He's not going to hit for a high average. If Joey Gallo has a 205 batting average, that's considered a success. Joey Gallo is Miguel Sano, who can actually play the field at a high level. Miguel Sano couldn't play the corner outfields, as we painfully learned in 2016, couldn't really play third base, and could play a decent first base. But as we learned, playing a decent first base isn't exactly that hard, considering Luis Arraez picked it up on the fly and was a Gold Glove finalist although that's a little ticky-tacky. But anyway, so Joey Gallo is basically Miguel Sano. A lot of home runs, a lot of strikeouts, and usually get either one in bunches. You're going to get a lot of home runs like the Twins saw today, 2 home runs and a double, or you're going to get what the Twins saw right before that, which was 0 for 8 with a handful of strikeouts. So Joey Gallo is a roller coaster just like Miguel Sano was. The only difference is Miguel Sano was able to put out that production for only really 2019 and then parts of 2015 and 2020. But the point, Miguel Sano was way too streaky and did not show enough consistently good production. Joey Gallo, up until basically getting traded to the Yankees, his time in Texas, he constantly had a lot of strikeouts and a low batting average, but hit the ball out of the yard and had a very high slugging percentage. That went away in New York, but has a chance to redeem itself again in Minnesota. I'm not banking hugely on a Joey Gallo redemption season, but at the same time, if you are, that's a positive step in that direction, like the Twins are. And David Popkins has worked, the Twins hitting coach has worked with Gallo's swing, trying to fix that. It's been a bit of a struggle early on for Gallo, but hey, he seems to have at least figured it out against the Royals bullpen and was able to just hit some absolute moonshots. If you look at the top exit velocities in today's game, Byron Buxton had one with 110 miles an hour, Trevor Larnach at 108, Joey Gallo 108, Joey Gallo again at 108, Michael A. Taylor 107.9 when he hit a double in, I believe, the 8th inning. But with the Twins, let's talk about Byron Buxton and his run production. He didn't hit any home runs. I don't even think he had an RBI, but he had a triple to get the Twins' first run of the season by scoring. He got on base a couple times on Saturday's game and scored 2 runs. I think he scored both runs for the Twins, and one was on a sacrifice fly that was hit in shallow center field, very, very shallow center field, about 20 feet behind the dirt. And Buxton saw that Isbell wasn't really making the best effort to get the catch, assuming that Buxton wasn't going to run, and Buxton did run, and he was able to score standing up. Byron Buxton, my dude, you're having a tough time sliding. Looked like when he tried to do the feet first slide into third base on opening day, just sat right on his butt. And then on Saturday's game, he tried to slide into second base in the opening inning and just looked like he whiplashed his head onto the dirt, and his helmet kind of flew up and hit him, and it looked like he almost got hit in the head with the ball as it was being thrown into second base. So really, I mean, we're lucky Buxton, insert Buxton injury comment here, but at the same time, Buxton, my guy, Buxton's such a freak of nature athlete, but yet like he doesn't quite know how to control himself. That's not a knock on Buxton. That's just kind of who he is. He runs so fast that his body can't control it sometimes, and he can't slow down properly. And that's what leads himself to get injured, I think, sometimes. But, and again, not his fault, just kind of how he's built. But if anything, kind of a hidden hot take conspiracy theories that Buxton might actually be healthier once he loses a step or two and doesn't have to run as ferociously as he does. But I digress. Buxton had himself a great series, even if it's just being DH, because as we learned, Michael A. Taylor played a fine center field, no real big mistakes, got a couple hits throughout the weekend. Again, I talked about him, not the biggest Michael A. Taylor guy in terms of a hitter, but he was fine. And again, every team has a leadoff hitter that you always wish you kind of had a little bit more production from. It's why they're a 9 hitter. It's like when a team has an offensive lineman that constantly screws up. It's like, well, you got 5 of them. One of them is not going to be great. And like every team has that interior offensive lineman they just love to get rid of. But anyway, with the Twins, this opening series, I'll go back to the notes here and see kind of what I didn't mention quite yet. Trevor Larnach is doing really, really well. We talked about Trevor Larnach having a real chance to break out this season in our previews. And I said, if Trevor Larnach can stay healthy, he's a constant production producer. That might be counterproductive or kind of a double negative, but you saw it with a lot of RBI single to score Byron Buxton. Had another RBI on Sunday, and he just constantly is. Whenever the Twins are scoring runs, Trevor Larnach's usually in the middle of it in some way, like Byron Buxton has been as well. And Buxton of course, gets all the headlines. But Larnach, again, having not a lot of headlines with Kirilloff and with Lewis kind of being around his progression to the majors, Trevor Larnach has a chance to become the Twins' 4 or 5 hitter. We talked about potential spots for him, and Larnach as a 4 or 5 hitter this season sounds about right. And Larnach has been the cleanup guy the first 3 games of the season, and he has a chance to make that stick for the time being. Trevor Larnach, when healthy, is a doubles and home run machine who can draw a lot of walks. And we'll just have to monitor Trevor Larnach, but it's a very good development for him because he has been productive when healthy. He's just got to stay healthy. And he had all of this time to rest and get back to 100%. And the hope now is that Trevor Larnach can have himself that breakout season that he's shown the potential to have in spurts, and now gets an opportunity to have that in long form. And essentially, if you look at the way that this season would have started for the Twins, you might have said Larnach starts the year in AAA, especially once Solano got into the mix. But with Kirilloff not being ready to go, it's opened him up to start in left field because Gallo had to go down to first base. And I think that it's actually bad news for Kepler, because Max Kepler has not gotten a hit. He's gotten 2 walks, but I think he's 0 for 12, 0 for 13 in the first 3 games. So a rough start for Kepler. Has had a couple hard hit balls to his credit, but for the most part, some not great at bats for the Twins right fielder in a season that was really important for him. He's an impending free agent after this year. Twins didn't trade him. They opted to bring him back, and I think they brought him back because they didn't think they were getting any real value for him and just decided to hang on to him and see if they could fix him. And with the change in the shift and getting him another offseason under Popkins to work out his stuff, Max Kepler has not had a lot to show for it quite yet. And the shift was supposed to be the big thing for more casual fans who said, oh, the shift is gone. Maybe that'll help out Kepler. And I talked about it last week, and I've talked about it before in an article I just wrote for Zone Coverage a couple of weeks ago. The shift ban is fine, but it's not going to fix Max Kepler. That Max Kepler needs to just make better contact with the baseball. It's essentially the most layman's way to put it. And he hasn't been able to do that so far. We'll have to see with Max Kepler, but that's, again, not great news for him, because let's say hypothetically, and I don't think this will happen, but let's say hypothetically in the next 2 weeks, you think Alex Kirilloff can get back onto the major league roster, or maybe Jorge Polanco comes back. Who are you sending down? Because right now Larnach has basically established himself or has played well enough. You can't send him back down. And Gallo is playing first base. You're not getting rid of Solano or Farmer. Nick Gordon doesn't have any options. You're not going to get rid of Nick Gordon. I think the Twins would get rid of Max Kepler before Nick Gordon. They have a surplus of lefty bats who are corner outfielders. Now, the Twins are going to ride with Kepler for a little bit and have even been putting him in the leadoff spot, mainly because they don't have Polanco and they don't have Arraez, and they don't want Buxton to be hitting in the leadoff spot. So there's really nowhere else to put Max Kepler, and it's kind of the Twins are basically throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks with him. But I think Max Kepler is out of the starting lineup relatively soon if things don't change. What is that leash? Are the Twins going to go a while? I don't know. It depends, because one, they're getting away with it right now, but man, if those options start piling up, like if Matt Wallner has a really good month of April and Max Kepler has a really bad month of April, even if Polanco or Kirilloff aren't close to coming back, would you DFA Kepler and select the Larnach, or and select Wallner and bring him up and move Larnach over to right field and have Wallner play there, or even have Wallner playing right field? But I think Max Kepler's in trouble, but it's the opening series. So with this and with anything I've said in this podcast, take it as a grain of salt. But I think I think it's not good for Max Kepler, basically, to put it in short. But the thing with the Twins' leadoff hitting situation, and this goes to a different conversation, is who do you put instead? Now, the easy answer right now is Ed Julian, who had a great spring, great World Baseball Classic, starting the year in AAA St. Paul. He's never played a AAA game up until this season. He just played his first couple in the last 2 days. So he needs to get some experience at AAA, I think, before you can really give him that chance to try and stick at the major league level. But also, what happens if Julian comes up and struggles? Or what happens if Julian doesn't quite prove himself to get up here until mid-May or June or July, then what are you going to do? Who's going to bat in that leadoff spot? Buxton's not going to do it every single night. Is it going to be Gallo? Because the Twins kind of flirted with that idea throughout the spring, and maybe now that Gallo had a good game, we'll see if Rocco wants to switch it up and put Gallo in that leadoff spot and maybe move Kepler down in the order. Or maybe if you're Rocco, you like having Gallo down and low and keeps that lineup just a little bit deeper. But at the same time, if you're the Twins, do you want to start every game with your leadoff hitter getting out? You know, it kind of wastes that in a sense. But I think that the Twins will give Kepler maybe a few more games, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Gallo's the leadoff hitter tomorrow. And Carlos Correa is not a leadoff hitter. Jose Miranda, Trevor Larnach, they're not leadoff hitters. Michael A. Taylor isn't a leadoff hitter. Who do you roll with? It's an interesting conversation with that. Ryan Jeffers and Christian Vasquez. Ryan Jeffers got his first start of the season today, had 2 RBIs. Big game for him. Christian Vasquez has done a really nice job calling games and has also had a nice handful of hits as well to start the year. Much improved from a unit that had Gary Sanchez and Caleb Hamilton and Sandy Leon as the battery last season. That not ideal. That's not a playoff lineup. Looking at some other things, Jose Miranda has been solid throughout the first 3 games. Drawing even a couple walks, which has been a nice little sneaky development. Who knows if that's just this series, if that can persist. Miranda hasn't been a huge walks guy, but in the minors was able to draw walks in 7% of his at-bats. So that could be something. If he can recapture that a little bit, would really be a big wrinkle to his game, because that was the thing with Miranda is he either struck out or put the ball in play. There was not a lot of walks, which again, that bare bones stat might not tell the entire story, but if you're at least able to get on base via the walk, it just helps out your overall production and helps out. It eventually can work you into a better situation as a hitter to take a few more walks. But anyway, I think I've hit the main beats that I wanted to talk about with the Twins. Here's the deal. Twins haven't been 3-0 since 2017 when they opened the season 3-0 at Target Field against the Kansas City Royals. So doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, but it's a nice start to the season. And at least, and I've said this with every Twins season, because mainly this is how 2016 went when the Twins went 0-9. But when you start out the season, just don't sink yourself. You can be 500 through the first month. That's fine, even a few games below. But if you start the season 5-15, it's over. Like there's just no digging out of that hole. And if you start the season 15-5, it doesn't guarantee you success, but you're in a great position. So just even starting 500 means you have some room to grow, but at the same time, you're still hanging around. And the Twins getting out 3-0 is a nice development to at least not bury themselves early in the season. Now we'll see that the Twins are playing a tougher team in Miami, at least pitching wise. So let's preview this series in Miami just a little bit, because we have the Luis Arraez reunion, and the pitching lineup looks to be Tyler Mahle, Kenta Maeda, Pablo Lopez, the 3 starters due up in this series, and they're going to be taking on Johnny Cueto, Sandy Alcantara, and Jesus Luzardo are the 3 pitchers for Miami in the series. Miami's pitching staff, one of the best in baseball. It's why they were deep enough to trade Pablo Lopez to the Minnesota Twins in exchange for Luis Arraez. So, and by the way, the Twins also got 2 minor leaguers in that deal. But when you look at production, Luis Arraez has gotten a lot of hits. He's been very productive through the first few games of the season. I think I want to look this up just to make sure I got this right. So if I look up Luis Arraez and I see his stat line through the first 4 games of the season, they played a 4-game series against the Mets. They lost 3 out of 4. But so far, in the first handful of games this year, Luis Arraez has according to Fangraphs, he has a 583 average, a 615 on base, and a 667 slugging percentage. So already a nice start to the season for Luis Arraez. And again, the Twins knew they were giving up a good hitter in Arraez, but they also knew they were getting a good pitcher back in Pablo Lopez. But the Twins, to say that they're completely better off without Arraez is wrong, because you can already see it in the leadoff spot. The Twins need to find somebody who can be that ideal leadoff hitter. That was Luis Arraez, and now they're scrambling to try and figure out who that guy can be until Ed Julian is ready. But until that day, or until Royce Lewis comes back, and I don't even know if Royce Lewis is a leadoff hitter, but until a Brooks Lee or somebody gets up here, you're kind of stuck with Kepler or Gallo as your leadoff hitters, because who knows when Polanco's coming back, who knows when Kirilloff is coming back. And the Twins will miss Luis Arraez, at least early in the season. Through the first half of the season, Luis Arraez's presence will be felt, that it's not there anymore as a leadoff hitter. But Pablo Lopez is a good pitcher, and the Twins already in that first start, you could see what he can do and how important he is for this Twins rotation. He's a number 2 who has the potential to be a number 1 if things go right for him this season for Pablo Lopez. But again, Miami is a team. You have Luis Arraez, you have Jazz Chisholm. They don't really have a ton of consistently productive hitters throughout their lineup. And that's why the Marlins had to trade for Luis Arraez, because their lineup stunk. And their lineup is better with Arraez, but it's still not great. And so if you're the Twins, that's a good opportunity for guys like Mahle and Maeda to get back on the right track. But at the same time, that Miami pitching staff is so deep, and especially because they're going to have to face Cueto, who gave the Twins some issues last season. They're also going to have to face Alcantara, who's the reigning NL Cy Young winner. And they're going to have to go up against Luzardo, who's another good young pitcher in his own right. It could be a pitching duel kind of series, because the Marlins pitching is so good and the Marlins hitting is so bad. But if you're the Twins, a couple things you do have to improve on in that series from Kansas City as a whole. Runners in scoring position was fine in the long run, but still did leave some runners on the bases, did leave some ducks on the pond. Gonna need to clean that up. Plus, hitting later in games. I know Joey Gallo had some good production. On Sunday, the Twins hit well late in games, but you saw as the game goes on, the Twins had some opportunities on opening day against Greinke, bases loaded, and the Twins couldn't bring home anybody. The Twins had a couple other opportunities in that game before finally breaking through in the 5th inning, but they're going to need to figure out how to get better as games go on, because that was the thing that they struggled with last season. Runners in scoring position and hitting consistently throughout the game, because they could, and it was also the flip side with the pitching. They could also pitch really well in the beginning of games, but by the time everybody made the in-game adjustments and just had gotten more comfortable in who they're playing in the flow of the game, didn't go well. For the Twins, their hitters by the 3rd time through the order, even by the time the bullpen got in, they pretty much did all they could do. And with the Twins pitching staff, same thing. Same thing. As the game went on, they weren't able to keep up with the production, and we've already covered that excruciating detail in the last couple podcasts as well. So there's a look at the Twins' opening series of the season against Kansas City. The Marlins are up next. The Twins are going to Miami, and then on the docket at home, the Houston Astros come to town in a potentially snowy Minneapolis by that point, although I think things will warm up by the weekend to at least be bearable for a Twins home opener at Target Field against a very, very tough team in the Houston Astros, who handled business against the White Sox in the first few games that I've seen from them as well. So there you go. That's bombs away. A lot more coming up as the Twins season continues. We're into the regular season. It's so fun to have Twins baseball back. Twins got the season started off on the right foot. They got everybody invested. And as again, we've talked about before, there's a lot of excitement with this Twins season. I've noticed it with the podcast numbers going up. Just noticed it in general with people talking about this team. There is an excitement level, and the Twins, at least in the first 3 games of the season, made good on that commitment to making this a good year for Twins baseball. So I'm CJ Baumgartner. This has been Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.